Coming live from San Francisco Bay Area, USA is our guest tonight. Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And before I move forward, may I request you to subscribe, follow, like, and comment on whichever platform you're watching or listening to this show on. And today we have Aaron Rubin, partner of Werba Rubin Papier, a wealth management firm. Werba Rubin Papier has been helping successful individuals manage their wealth, and Aaron has published his first book, Financial Adulting, as a guide to help young professionals navigate tax, investment, and estate planning. So he'll be telling us about all that. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Excited.
Thank you, Aaron, for taking out time for the show. So, as the topic says, how can one be responsible for his money best? So, especially from from the younger lot of our young generation, what do you suggest? How can they manage their money best? Because that's a major problem. They have money, they earn money, but a lot of people still do not know how to manage their money, especially when they for their later stages in life.
Yeah, what I tell everyone, whether or not, no matter their age, is you have to put a budget together first. And it's impossible to know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And so getting that budget together and looking over the last 6 months and sort of extrapolating, the year from there, putting that stake in the ground and saying, okay, this is what I'm spending now. Even if it's, horrible decisions, you need to know if you're making horrible decisions. Otherwise, again, you can't change anything unless you know what it is you need to change. So step one for anyone is to get that budget put together. And once you know that, then you can start making your changes. And whether or not, you might be surprised by some of the things you find. Because you could think, oh, well, in here in California, I don't know what it is, but everyone eats out a lot at restaurants. And I'll tell you, it costs a lot of money. And people don't realize, every time, they go spend the $30 or $40, who knows? It doesn't seem like a lot. But then all of a sudden, when you look on your budget, you realize that for the year, you're spending thousands of dollars a year on eating out. And I'm not saying, you should never eat out. That's you need to live your life. But, what it might mean is changing some of those habits a little bit and saying, what, maybe I don't need to eat out 4 days a week. Maybe I eat out one or two, and I can save, a couple $1,000s, and if you're in your 20s, or if you're a younger person, you save that couple $1,000s a year, you can use that and put that into investment vehicles, which are going to earn money instead of you spending it. So, to me, the budget is like the most important thing that any person, especially a young person, can do.
Right. So will that be just the budgeting part will help them towards, planning for the future in terms of living a continuously good life? Or does it take more than that?
Yeah, well, the budget is step one, but it's the big step, because I think that with the budget, one, I think it's scary for people because some people you don't want to know. It's hard for us to look at our bad habits and say we need to change them. So just by doing the budget, you're sort of forcing yourself to look in the mirror and say, this is what I'm doing, and this is how my money is being spent. The hard part again is making and then not the hard. That is the hard part, and then you have to make the change afterwards. And so the change, can include lots of things. And the first, I'm not familiar with how savings vehicles work in India. I have a number of Indian friends, and they all tell me that everyone buys real estate in India. That's sort of the big thing. But here, definitely using the stock market, and there's retirement savings vehicles that the government kind of gives you credits for, or they give you, tax incentives here. And again, if you have that in India, you should use that. But when you save that money, when you see how much you're spending, you say, okay, I'm gonna make a difference. I'm gonna spend $1,000 or $2 less on eating out, and then I'm gonna spend and maybe you're a gamer, and my kids are are under 13 still, but they still when they go on their games, they're buying lots of stuff that I don't understand, that again you kind of really don't need. But as you take a look and you say, do I really need to spend? Again, people can spend a lot of money on their gaming. Am I spending too much here? Maybe I can cut it by 25 or 50%, and sort of look at those different buckets and say, can I do that? Obviously, if it's if it's clothing and you're being modest about your, assuming you're not buying Gucci and Louis Vuitton, it's hard for some buckets to be changed. And obviously there's things like gas, which is very expensive, everywhere
Right.
in the world right now, that again, it costs, some of those costs are you can't change, but that which you can change, the discretionary part, of that budget, you change that. And then you take that money that you're saving, and hopefully it's substantial. And for someone in their 20s, for someone who is young, again, I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm well past my 20s. Even if you're only saving, $2,000, $5,000 a year, if you can take that money as a 22 or 24-year-old or however old you are, if you can take that money and put it into some investment, whether or not that's the stock market, which is kind of where I tend to put my money, although I do have real estate as well, or real estate, if that's where you want to be, whatever you do, if you can take that money and let it grow for 50 years, that $2,000 is going to grow to a lot. If you put in the stock market, and if you're a little more aggressive about it, and if you're getting average rates of return in the stock market, that money should double, maybe every 9 years or so. So if you're talking about 50 years and you put it in, you're in your 20, it's so you get 28, 36, 54. 36, I'm sorry, 44, 52, 60, 68. Let's say that's 6 doublings, right? So that's 2,000 to 4,000, 8,000, 16,000, 32,000, 64,000, 128,000. So every time you can do that with $2,000, that's great. If you can do that every year, all of a sudden, you have a lot of money, when you go to retire. And again, you don't need to do crazy things. And there's lots of graphs out there that show that if you put in, just a little bit of money early on, and let's say later on in life you have kids, and I don't know if you have kids, but they're insanely expensive. And I wish I could save more, but I spend it all on my kids. But if before you have kids and before all those big expenses come up, then if you save for 5 or 10 years like that, just saving $5,000 a year early on in your 20s, you're gonna have plenty of money. And you just wait on it and you don't spend it on other silly things. You're gonna have plenty of money. So again, and it may seem like it's only $2,000, only $5,000, but again, when you talk about compound returns, that it is not insignificant. And so again, I think people need to get that mindset, because some people think, oh, well, if I'm not saving tens of thousands of dollars, then it's not really worth my time. It's not true. It's not true at all. So budgeting is important, but again, cutting the areas which are discretionary, for that savings part is also important. And I'd say the other thing that people need to be aware of is something called lifestyle creep.
Right.
And lifestyle creep is, you make a little bit more money later on. Let's say you get a raise in the middle of the year, and all of a sudden you're making $2,000 more a year. The temptation is, well, all right, I'm making more money. I can go back to eating out 3 days a week and not 2 days a week. Well, if you that's called lifestyle creep, because every time your income goes up, your spending tends to go up, and it doesn't have to be that way. Again, that budget is sort of your guide, for all time. And obviously, you can have different expenses as things go on in life, but there's no reason to change that lifestyle as your income goes up. And if instead you took that money again and you invested it, or you put it on the side for, again, one day maybe a real estate investment, you know,
Right.
you the lifestyle creep thing, if you can keep that under control, and if you save a little bit early, I guarantee you're going to be okay later
Right.
on.
Right, Aaron. So suppose some 25-year-old guy with 2 3 years of experience now, what should they do in terms of planning for savings and all that stuff? Should they go for understanding all the tricks of this whole wealth management stuff to tax planning and everything for themselves, or should they from the very beginning try and take some advice from a financial advisor? How do you look at that? What should they do?
Yeah, so a lot of it depends on the situation. It some of it depends on how much you have, to an extent. Because unfortunately, if someone's selling you commission products, a lot of times that's not necessarily in your best interest.
Right.
So, what I tell people who are younger, who come and ask me for help, and maybe they're not a good fit for my firm, because we tend to work with people that have millions of dollars, not a couple $1,000. What I tell people is, one, you can for the investment side, you can go to the open market if you use some place like Vanguard. Very cheap, mutual funds, very well diversified, all the things that you should really be looking for. And Warren Buffett, who I think we all know, once said almost everybody, institutional individual, is better off buying a low cost mutual fund, and he's right. And so if you are younger, you've 2 3 years of experience, you're saving $5,000 to $10,000 a year, hopefully, on the side. Use Warren Buffett's advice. The man knows what
Right.
he's talking about. And go to a Vanguard, find a really well diversified ETF or mutual fund, which there's lots of them out there. Just pay attention to make sure you're not buying something that's very concentrated. But if it's really well diversified, just stick it in there. Don't worry about the rest. That'll take care of itself over time.
Right.
If you start having kind of deeper questions about the planning side, I think at that point, using an hourly planner, because some people charge, some people like me, they charge by assets under management, or they charge a commission, and some people will charge by the hour. So you use 2 hours of time, you pay them a couple $100, or maybe more than that, and you get the answers you need, and then you move on, which might be fine for someone in their 20s. If you have tax issues, there's lots of people who do tax returns, out there. Some are better than others. If you want, let's say if you need help filing a tax return, like our group, we file tax returns. Our minimum is $1,500, which is more expensive than some people are used to, because we do more complex type planning. If you don't need someone who does that sort of complex type work, you can find someone who can either do your return, or again charge you by the hour, to answer your questions about tax. So
Right.
it's again, I wouldn't run out and say, okay, I need to find a financial advisor. One, because they're all different, and I'm not big on the commission based financial advisor, because to me their incentives are to sell more products, not necessarily to get someone to the right fit for them. So
Right.
again, and a lot of times, if you only have if you only have 20, 40, $50,000, which again is significant over the long period of time, but if you only have that now, you might run into somebody who's going to sell you a commission product where you have to give a lot of your money up for that commission, and again, it's I'm not a big fan.
Right, right. Aaron, so you see, you have advised a lot of people, you deal with a lot of clients, individuals, as well as, high net worth individuals and people who have family offices and all that stuff. Now, you have seen a lot of people making decisions, investment decisions. So, maybe audience can learn from that is that what is the best investment decision that you have seen, and from what people can learn from.
Yeah. So the best decisions that I've seen people do is generally that of diversification. So we deal a lot with people that have stock options and RSUs, and again, there should be a number of your listeners that have that. Um, and before they go public, they're building up a lot of stock in their company,
Okay.
and and so when the company goes public, oftentimes they have to wait before they can sell their shares. And so, and then the day comes where they can sell. The people that I've seen that have had the most success have chosen to sell more when that opportunity comes. So we had a client that had a lot in Coinbase, and so thankfully he sold. When it was actually a direct listing, but he sold a bunch of shares in Coinbase. You know, right when the market opened, he made a ton of money. And then of course we all know what happened to Coinbase stock. It absolutely fell like a rock. Same thing with I had another client at I don't want to be too specific because it's a smaller company than Coinbase. But had again same thing where a company came out, it actually did well for the first few months. He sold a bunch, secured himself financially, and then he kept 25% of his holdings inside, and now the company is down 88% from where it was. But because he got out, when the market was still, good, you know, again, he felt good about his decision. I mean, the people that hold on too long, that again, I've seen that as well, and it's not. I don't want to say it's sad to see because that sounds pejorative, but at the same time, it's like if they wouldn't have been as greedy, I mean, and greedy can be good and greedy can be bad. If they would have kind of sold things a little bit more, I'll say academically, if they would have been more disciplined about their selling, they would have been a lot happier. And I have clients who, they were in a pharmaceutical stock that it shot up like a rocket, and it's a big stock, so I can tell you the name of it. It's called Mellencrot. Mellencrot's I think it's an Irish, based in Ireland, a pharmaceutical company. It got up to like $120 a share in 2015, 2016, something like that. And I think today it's trading for under $10. So a 90% drop. I've seen huge drops, and for people, and I've seen it the other way too, where I have lots of clients who worked at Apple, and I always tell them to sell, 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 and I've been saying that for the last 13 years, and a lot of times they didn't listen to me, and I'm glad they didn't. But I'll tell you, in my experience, there's a lot more companies that are not Apple than there are companies that are Apple. So if you might be in one of the more, maybe you are at Apple, the next Apple, but I wouldn't bet the farm that you're on there.
Oh, okay. And worst investment decision that people can learn from.
Yeah. Okay. So I was working. I got a call from this. This was probably in 2012. I got a call from a woman who was frantic that her husband had decided, and for your listeners, especially the younger ones, they don't know this, but back in 2008, which is ancient history for a lot of people, back in 2008 there was a big huge crash. Right, the market was down 50%, and everyone was freaking out, and then 2009 happened, and there was a lot of recovery in 2009. Not all the way, but still a lot of recovery in 2009. But a lot of people were calling it was a double dip, right? That the market dipped huge in 2008, it popped back up in 2009, and they were sure that that sometime after 2009, the market was going to dip again by even more, right? Which is sort of how the Great Depression looked. And so everyone's saying double dip, double dip, double dip. And this woman who had called me up frantically, her husband believed that there was going to be another double dip. The double dip was going to happen. He was convinced. So he went out and he bought what's called triple bear S&P 500 ETFs. And what that is it's 3 times the performance of the S&P 500, but going in the opposite direction. So if you want to earn money, the S&P has to lose money, and the returns are amplified by 3x. And so he had bought a bunch of triple bear ETFs at the end of 2011, and had put all their money into it, and he had lost hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars in doing that. And I said, you know what, you got to get out of that, or else you're going to end up broke. She said, well, my well, tell me what you do. I said, oh, well, and for her, the mutual funds made sense. Sometimes mutual funds make sense. Sometimes ETFs make sense. And sometimes individual stocks make sense. Sure, depends on your situation. With her, the mutual funds made the most amount of sense. And so I said, okay, this is the mutual funds that you should think about using. And she said, oh, I'm sorry, we don't use mutual funds at all. And it was so rigid thinking that I hope her husband stopped doing what he was doing. But to me, I mean, that was crazy. Betting against the stock market for long periods of time generally doesn't work out for you. Especially if you're that young person, you've got 50 years. I can't guarantee anything. I feel very, very confident that over the next 50 years, the stock market's going to be up. Between now and 50 years, I don't know how it's going to move. It may go down by 60% in 10 years. I don't know. But in 50 years, it's going to be up. I feel confident on that. So to bet against the market for long periods of time, you can really, injure yourself that way. And the other thing I'd say is I have a lot of clients that really like to keep in cash, a lot of cash, and I always warn against that because, with the cash, the banks aren't going to pay you the inflation rate. So every day you're losing money, to inflation. And so again, keeping lots. I mean, you need to keep money in case an emergency happens. Always keep money for an emergency, but don't keep too much in cash, or else you're going to find your money's not worth as much when you go to pull it out. So those are probably the two big mistakes that I've seen.
Right, Aaron. So tell us a bit about your book, Financial Adulting. Tell us about it so that people want, they can buy it also wherever it's available.
So Financial Adulting, available on Amazon. I'll tell you, I found earlier this year someone came out with another book called Financial Adulting, with a slightly different title on the like a subtitle, slightly different subtitle than mine. So for what that's worth. So my book has it's got a yellow cover and it looks really cool. And so what my book is, it's sort of a guide. It has storytelling in there, but it also acts as a reference guide. So if you have questions about budgeting or about investment vehicles, again, it's specific to the U.S. If you have questions about how different advisors work, if you have questions about real estate, if you have questions about estate planning, it's all sort of in that book. And if you don't feel like reading the whole thing, and I think everyone should read it cover to cover and memorize it. But if you don't want to do that, at the end of the chapter, there's always 4 or 5 bullet points that tell you the most important thing to know in the chapter, so that if you just want to look back and just take 5 minutes and read the most important stuff, you can do that too. And so again, we go through the whole thing, budgeting through estate planning.
Right. Aaron, now with a lot of changes in our economy globally, and with the young generation looking for much more, experiences, they want to travel more, they want time for themselves. So there is this whole thing of great resignation going on. People are going out and living their life and working wherever they want to work from. So in that aspect, when a huge number of people are doing independent work, is there some sort of wealth management or some advice with which they can form up their future in terms of finances? Is there anything that you want to share for them?
Yeah, so in the one, I think part of it is I think there's flexibility to be had. I know for us, for our business, right? We we look to hire people who are remote. So there's lots and lots more remote work available. And I think for businesses, and I'm sure like you and like us, we're a lot more flexible than I think we used to be. And so, one, I think you can look to, if you want to work for like a company, and I know like I have clients that work all across Silicon Valley, and some never go into work. So I mean, if you want that flexibility, it's there for you. So again, if you're trying to be an independent contractor, um, that's a sort of a different game than trying to work remote. If you're the independent contractor type, it's at least in the U.S., that it takes a lot more planning, and you need to think through, okay, because in the U.S., if you work for a regular company, they pull out your taxes for you. Well, if you're an independent contractor, they don't do that anymore. So you need to make sure that you're paying the right amount of taxes. So I think if you're a young person doing independent contractor work, you should probably be working with a good tax person to make sure that you're pulling all the money aside that you need to. Um, and and yeah, again, managing that budget's also important. If your goal is to travel across Europe and work, intermittently, you again, that takes a lot of planning. That's not just something you do on a lark. So again, I would say, before you try doing something like that, make sure the numbers work out for you. Again, you run your current budget, and then you have to run a proposed budget, and then you might get to Europe and you might find, oh my gosh, things are more expensive than I thought they were. And then you're gonna have to retweak your budget, see what's possible, and maybe your plans need to change. So being flexible when you're trying to do something a little bit more off the beaten path, I think is super important.
Right, Aaron, right. I think you have covered quite a bit in terms of how can one be responsible for his or her money best, and that information, your tips will certainly help a lot of people who listen to or see this particular show.
Right.
With this, thank you very much for your time, and with this, it's a wrap on this edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you very much once again.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.